Hi, we're here today with Fred and Nancy Kerr, who are founding members, past chairs, and from Holly, you've served on about every committee or board there has been at SCCF, the South Central Community Foundation. So welcome today. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having us, Kim.
So I want to talk a little bit about how the South Central Community Foundation was formed, because you two were huge players in that. So can you tell us a little bit about how the South Central Community Foundation was formed and why it was formed?
Well, in 1994, which is really when the conceptual meetings started for what turned out to be this community foundation, the concern at the time was that the inheritances that flowed with families that moved away from their local community, the resources left the community, the resources that people called home, and their money left with the inheritances. And so the concern was to try to find a practical way for people to keep their resources at home. The community foundation idea was used in larger cities, but not really in rural areas. So the idea was how do we form such a structure in a rural area? So that's what the early meetings were about.
Okay, and you decided to do more than one county, more than just Pratt County, but also our surrounding neighbors.
That's right. We thought it was important to help other counties with this concept because they had the same needs, and it takes people and administration to run something like this. So if we could form one community foundation that was applicable to 6 and it turned out to be 7 counties, then that would be an advantage. So that's the way the concept went.
And I think another selling point on that was not only keeping the inheritance at home, but to have an impact at the local level, to be able to just readily see what your dollars were going to be doing right in your hometown.
And that's very, very important to a lot of people, to see the impact of their dollars that they've given.
Yes.
Because we give out of love and because we care, so it's important to see those dollars at work.
And when donors set up an endowment, which most of the resources, that's the vehicle that's used is an endowment, the donors set up the rules for those endowments, what the money is to be used for, as long as it's charitable, of course, and in their own communities. And so then the earnings from these endowments go to whatever the donor has designated. So it very much is keeping the resources at home to be used in a way that the donors are interested.
One of the things that I found very interesting while we were just having a conversation before we sat down for the interview is that we were the first rural communities foundation. So we were the first ones to ever do, thanks to you guys, a multi-county rule. So I think that's just really important.
Well, it was, and it wasn't our idea. We were approached with it. The Pratt Community College and Pratt Regional Medical Center, they both were interested in this idea, and so they donated the time of their executive directors to serve as co-executive directors to get this foundation started. So Sandy Fruit was the Pratt Community College executive director at the time, and so it was largely her idea, along with an attorney from a city that she knew, and so that's how it started. And they approached us, and we thought it was a good concept that we would like to help with, and that was 1994.
And the hospital was involved also, and Dwayne Bryan was the executive director, and they both donated their time to help get the rules in place and get Community Foundation going.
One of the things we also talked about is that the SCCF is a 501c3 organization. So if you're looking for a 501c3, which are very hard to set up sometimes unless you know people, so say I wanted to have a little 501c3 project, could I bring that to SCCF and could you oversee that project for me, like be my umbrella sort of?
Exactly. And there have been several examples of that in our area where they have a great idea of raising money and wanting to give it back, but they, as you say, it's complicated sometimes to get all of their it in the legal forms. So SCCF can provide them, be their umbrella, and they could sustain that for a long time, or if they want to, when they're able, then they can have their own foundation.
Okay, that's a really neat opportunity that people have.
It is.
Because, again, it is very complicated sometimes to form those 501c3 entities.
So Kim, the early conceptual meeting started in 1994, and then the foundation was more formally organized in 1995. The first grants then, after a year, in 1996, were made. And you probably have more money in your pocket right now than the amount of those grants in 1996. But we thought it was important, whatever the money was, $100 or $200 that had been earned and could be given back to the donors' wishes in their endowment, to go ahead and do it. So a very small amount but important amount was given in 1996, and that has grown into hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years.
That's just amazing.
A lot of the grants are scholarships, and people will have maybe a favorite teacher or the school that they just want to support. And so they will have their students apply for these scholarships, and that's a large part of our donations. And along with that, the Community Foundation eventually formed a teacher's grant, and the teachers can apply for that. And at first it was just $100 for if as we all know, teachers spend a lot of their own pocket money. So this was just, if you had $100, what would you do for your classroom? And that was very favorably done. I think now, and I don't know I think that's been increased some, but it certainly is the idea to help the teachers help their classrooms.
So you touched on the education portion of this, and you do a lot of scholarships and you do a lot of teacher grants, and education is so important to us as Kansans, as Americans, as to anybody. I think education should be a #1 priority. You also started a program to help teach young people about philanthropic giving and about how to be good stewards of their communities. Can you touch on that a little bit?
You know, it's called Why Mad? Youth Making a Difference. And they have made a difference. They have 1 or 2 junior or senior from high school serve on the committee, and they're from, we want them to be from every county, and there's a director for that, and they come together. The Community Foundation gives them a certain amount of money that they're in control of who's going to get those grants. And so they look through all of the grants that have been submitted, and then those students decide which ones are, just kind of ring their bell, which ones and they really study them. In fact, at one time on the grants committee, we thought the students were doing a much better job of finding out the worth of the grantees. They really took a hold of it, and they've been very successful with their program. And as you said, it is an education that sometimes we don't give to children, is how to give back to your community, how to be philanthropic. And several years ago, they received a national award, the top national award for youth being involved in philanthropy.
That's amazing. Right here in Pratt, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
We got an award for that. So it just shows the importance, I think, again, of teaching young people how to give back.
Mm-hmm.
So in a variety of ways.
Yes, and the students are incredibly, they want to be very thorough. They're very careful with their money, and they do an exceptionally good job of deciding who will get those grants.
That is just amazing to me. I wish I would have had that kind of opportunity when I was in school. I was a little bit midlife when I learned about philanthropic giving in your communities. So, when you do these teacher grants, I know I just saw an article in the newspaper, the Pratt Tribune, not too long ago about in Pratt County they handed out grants. So they go to every community and do that with these grants?
Yes, we started just doing them in Pratt, and the community said, no, we'll come to Pratt. That's not a big deal. But then we decided several years ago that each county would receive their own grants in the county. And that not only shows the community what the foundation is doing, but it also is more of an awareness of the community foundation in their county. And that I think is the right way to do it. So.
I would agree with that. We also talked a little bit about the Greensburg tornado. We were very lucky to have the SCCF when that happened, unfortunately, but the SCCF Community Foundation was able to help, I guess. I'm trying to struggle with words here, but they were able to help Greensburg. Can you
Yes, Kim, that's a very important event. As you say, a tragic event, but the Greensburg tornado in 2007, this community foundation had been running 10 or 12 years at that point, and so it had a reputation built up as being reliable. And so when that tornado occurred, and there was publicity, national publicity about it, and people wanted to give, but they wanted to give reliably so that their money was used for Greensburg in this case. And so the community foundation within the first weekend was up and running with a site that donors from across the nation could give money to the Greensburg Tornado Fund. And so for the next several months, there were weekly meetings in Greensburg with the Greensburg folks to help allocate the funds that had come in. And I think it was a great help to that community to start their recovery from the tornado. And there are quite a few things you see when you drive down Main Street in Greensburg right now that started through that fund for the recovery of Greensburg.
Well, like Fred said, not only was the South Central Community Foundation known at that time of being reliable and an established foundation, but Greensburg didn't have a post office. They had no way to collect money, no address to give people, send it here. There was just nothing left in Greensburg. So this, because the South Central Community Foundation was known, it was really the way to go to get money to Greensburg.
So the South Central Community Foundation.
SCCF.
SCCF. I know it's such a mouthful. It's so hard for me sometimes. So the SCCF has done so many things for our community, and just, we don't think about it all the time, but just these examples. If I wanted to give to SCCF, if I wanted to make an endowment, can it just be money? Can it be land or other things?
Well, really anything of value, of resources, assets, I guess it's probably the best word, assets, can be given, whether they're monetary, whether they're land, or the example of a building, as long as it can be turned into resources that are invested. That's what the Community Foundation would do, is invest. And as you know, during this 25 years or whatever it's been, the markets have been relatively good. So there have been good earnings for the people's endowments. So they need to get some legal advice, either through the Home Office, Holly and her resources, or their own attorney, as to what works for them. But yes, any assets of value are eligible and become a donation from the people.
If you don't have enough money to start an endowed fund, there are other ways to give to the community and to the foundation that your money can be used as you would want it to be. And that's why scholarships are so available, is that it doesn't have to be a certain amount of money. For an endowed fund, it does have to be.
Nancy just mentioned scholarships, and of course when you think about keeping resources at home, you're not only talking about money, you're talking about young people. And so there really is an emphasis on the youth. Of course, the endowment, or the scholarships, excuse me, which I think there are well over 100 scholarships now that are given out every year. That's for young people, of course. And then what Nancy was mentioning about the youth making a difference, their experiences in how to make grants. So there really is an emphasis on young people and trying to help their ideas stay at home too.
Right. We want them to go out and get educated, but we want them to come back and be a part of our community.
The best thing is they
Exactly.
come back to them personally. Yes.
Yes.
Right. We want them to come back and move back and bring those ideas and their selves back.
Exactly.
I went to. I'm about the same age as your daughter, Kathy, and I know when we were at the age to get out of Pratt, we ran. But now that we're a little bit older, I think we see how amazing our community is, and how, I lived in New York for a while, and it's just not the same. It's good to be back here because we're so kind to each other, and we like to help each other, and we're there for our friends and neighbors. And I didn't feel that in New York, so I'm so glad to be
Well, I
back.
thought you wanted to come back because of the softball team you played on as a
Well, that's true too, because you were a tremendous coach, and I still can't throw very far, but I can throw pretty accurate. So, so is there anything else that you would like to touch on with SCCF?
I just think the philanthropy part of it, and as you have expanded on that, that goes beyond just money. That's giving in so many ways, and it makes you think about how could you make a difference? What is important in our community? Who could it affect? And philanthropy is just such a big word but I think the Community Foundation gives us a handle on that word.
And I think, Kim, looking ahead, the idea of keeping assets at home for use by the youth and local communities, that needs to be supported. It is supported now. We need to continue with that support. We hear discussion now about the wealth that has concentrated among a few people in the country, that this is a way to keep assets at home for a community to use for the betterment of that community. So I think that just needs to be encouraged and supported.
So whether I have $1 or I have $1 million, I can go see Holly at SCCCF and make a difference.
Yes.
And I think that's an amazing thing, because again, some people don't have the monetary resources, but they do have time. You can donate your time by volunteering, and you can donate your ideas. So there's a lot of ways to donate. So what do you see for the future of SCCF?
Well, I hope it's just growth and support of this whole concept, so that these communities, in this case 7 counties, thrive and continue to be a nice place to live, where at least a certain number of people will want to continue that lifestyle. So I hope that's supported.
Well, thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for being a founding member and part of this and help getting it started, because it's an asset for our community it's priceless. So thank you.
Thanks for having us, Kim.
Thanks.